Marching armies and high stone walls project the power of an empire, but they are sustained by a less visible force. In the 3rd century BCE, the Indian statesman Chanakya argued that the accumulation of wealth was the supreme overriding duty of a sovereign. These ancient palm leaf manuscripts codify this philosophy into a strict rule, Dharmasya Moolam Artha. It translates as, the root of dharma is finance. Chanakya argued that without a funded state, justice and moral order have no means of enforcement. When the royal coffers run dry, the apparatus of the empire stops. Soldiers go unpaid, public works cease, and the king is forced to extract the last drops of vitality from his citizens simply to keep the state functioning. A secure treasury is the prerequisite for every moral and protective duty the state performs. The Mauryan Empire operated a massive economic machine to maintain this revenue. It managed agricultural yields, state-run mining, manufacturing centers, and tolls on trade routes spanning the subcontinent. As this diagram shows, all these streams converged onto a single official, the Samaharta, or Collector General. This role required immense precision. Every piece of revenue was categorized by its region of origin, the specific asset type, and the local official responsible for its collection. While the Collector General gathered the wealth, the Chamberlain secured it. This second pillar of the treasury was responsible for the physical architecture and defense of the royal vaults and storehouses. To prevent theft, the treasury was built as a fortress within a fortress, encircled by dedicated guards, high parapets, and a deep ditch. The state also paid its top ministers extraordinary sums to insulate them from the temptation of taking bribes. Looking at the records in the Arthaśāstra, chief counselors and priests received 48,000 panas a month. This vast bureaucratic machine was built on the assumption that accumulating immense wealth naturally attracts theft from the very people hired to protect it. Internal entropy can bleed an empire to death. The slow, invisible hemorrhage of embezzlement turns government officials into a persistent threat to the treasury. Chanakya observed that when government servants deal with revenue, they will inevitably misappropriate a portion of it for themselves. It is impossible to hold honey on the tip of the tongue without swallowing at least a drop. Chanakya applied this same logic to government servants. Handling the king's wealth creates an irresistible temptation to taste it. Like a fish moving beneath the surface of murky water, it is impossible to detect exactly when or how it drinks. Because human greed is a constant factor, the state cannot rely on the honor system. Internal corruption must be treated as a war of attrition that saps the strength of the empire. Pacing increases, precise and clinical. The state responded to this invisible theft with constant multi-departmental audits of every ledger in the empire. No single official was ever given complete authority. The system mandated multiple chiefs per department to prevent centralized power and collusion. Government officials were frequently transferred from one post to another, ensuring they had no time to build corrupt local networks. Proven embezzlement resulted in the immediate confiscation of all property and demotion, returning the stolen wealth to the treasury. The king also deployed deep cover spies. Agents posing as ascetics, merchants, or grieving citizens actively tested the integrity of local officials and reported back to the capital. Even officials who brought in double the expected revenue were punished. Excessive profit was seen as proof of illegal extortion, which threatened the long-term stability of the state. A ruthless system of mutual suspicion and surveillance provided the final layer of defense. This omnipresent psychological pressure secured the treasury as effectively as any guard or stone wall. In the ancient world, taxation was a strict social contract. It was the price the populace paid in direct exchange for the king's protection and the maintenance of order. But the state recognized that taxes must never act as a check on trade. A profit margin always had to remain to ensure the taxpayer remained motivated. The king was advised to collect taxes like a bee gathering honey, drawing necessary wealth gently without hurting the flower or depleting the source. If the state took too much, the contract collapsed. Pan across these relief carvings and you see the population that bore the weight of the state. Overtaxation led to mass peasant emigration and agricultural failure, eventually starving the empire. Sustainable taxation requires extreme restraint, treating the kingdom's wealth as a fragile ecosystem rather than an infinite resource. But when famine or invasion empties the treasury, the ecosystem fails. In extreme financial straits, the state abandons the bee and honey ideal. The law permits the king to adopt ruthless, oppressive measures to ensure the state's survival. During crises, the state can raise taxes indefinitely, demand forced loans, and confiscate hoarded metals. The state may even secretly rob religious establishments or deploy spies to stage fake miracles to extract gold from the citizens. These measures follow a brutal logic. Individual rights and standard morality are subordinate to the survival of the state apparatus. Wealth is the fuel, and justice is the flame. When the treasury runs dry, civilization collapses, requiring the absolute use of force to restore order. Next, we look at the mechanics of that force.